Okay, I think we're going to continue our dance center thread here. Is that right? Yes, it is right. With Onye Ozuzu, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm
Thanks.
okay. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good. Well, actually, you're going to help me sort of continue this theme that started actually with Eduardo 2 segments ago in talking about the Dance Center.
Hmm.
Of course, you're the dean at University of Florida now, but before that, you were the chair at the Dance Center of Columbia College, and then, of course, the dean as well. And in your time there, from what I know so far, it seems like you were able to re-examine and reevaluate what a dance education for an undergrad student could be. And I'm wondering if you can tell me in more detail about that.
Sure. I came to, like many of us in the dance world, I came because I was already related. You know, we're a big family spread out, and so Daryl Jones and I were young dancers together at Florida State University. He was getting his graduate degree. I was still in my undergraduate years, and we danced together with Nia Love of Blacksmith's Daughter. Um, Sort of, back in the 90s, back in the early 90s. And, he kept in touch. And so as he was working at Columbia College Chicago with Bonnie Brooks and Peter Carpenter, Lisa Gonzalez, Rocky Monroe, they were starting the conversations about what is a dance education, what is style, what is technique, and how do those fit within the history of the dancing body in the United States. And I had been involved in a conversation at my institution before then, the University of Colorado Boulder, where we had really been unpacking that with a lens towards a conceptual and theoretical orientation towards the definition of race and racism in systems in the United States. So unpacking our system, our dance education system, our higher ed system, and the language that we were using and the way that we would allocate resources, time resources, space resources, studio resources, the ways that we would think about auditioning dancers, so sorting people into groups, and what value systems we were using to do that. What did we mean when we said that a dancer's body was organized? Did that mean that the dancer was using their spine in a single unit like a ballet technique? Or did that mean that they were highly articulating a multi-centered torso that could isolate various motions in different parts of the spine? And where were those value systems seated culturally and racially and in terms of power? And so Daryl invited me in first as a guest artist just to join the conversation. So I want to be really clear that I joined a conversation like a stone skipping across the pond that was already deep in the waters at Columbia College Chicago. And so I came in having come from a dance department that had already made those changes, that had looked at West African dance as a companion to European ballet, as a foundational technique of the American dancing vocabulary, as has been demonstrated here today and is so powerfully demonstrated in the history of Chicago through the techniques of rhythm and blues dancing, jazz dancing, disco dancing, house dancing, tap dancing, ballet dancing, Irish dancing, and the ways that all of those dancing bodies have informed and shaped and reshaped one another. And the struggles for power that came along with that process, right? So, so when I came to the city of Chicago, wow, it was such a blessing to be at Columbia College Chicago with its location right there in the South Loop, and our student body, that 40% students of color, and to work with colleagues who were ready to go there, who were ready to see what could happen if we were to imagine another way of scaffolding a curriculum for dance training. And and um, and we did that and got a chance to see the results and be taught by them.
And what sort of results were you able to see over time in that respect?
Those results came on many levels. I think that technically, one of the things that I remember is after about 3 years, we had equalized ballet and West African as foundational techniques. We had brought in some choice in terms of what dancers could then specialize as they moved through a degree program that we still saw as having a contemporary dancers as its final output, but that those contemporary dancers and dance makers could see their technical vocabulary centered in West African or more ballet aesthetic, modern or hip hop, but they could still see themselves and identify themselves as contemporary dancers. I remember we brought in some external evaluators to look at our dancers and evaluate their technique development. And one of the conclusions that came out of that assessment process was of this very specific observation that our level 2 dancers were showing an unusual level of sort of the capacity to access spiral. So the ability to access sort of 3-dimensional movement in their body, grounded from the hips and spiraled up through the torso, something that would normally not emerge until higher levels, right? The sort of like something that you strive. I was in a program that was gram based, right? And so you like hope and pray that dancers finally understand what that means. And there was something about the integration of the West African movements with going back and forth into ballet-based training that was allowing dancers to find that articulation much earlier. So there was that. We learned that we had to address race and racism very directly, that you couldn't just put African technique and ballet technique on a level and just say, okay, enjoy. That people had to learn language and analytical tools to be able to engage with one another productively and honestly around what it meant to move those resources around. I mean, there were people that had steady jobs at Columbia College Chicago that no longer had those steady jobs once that curriculum changed its focus. And there were people that hadn't had access to steady jobs at Columbia College Chicago that gained access. And the economic politics and the social politics of what that meant in terms of fostering a community of dancers that were supportive and that could collaborate in supporting and fostering the development of young dancers, that was a challenge and a process, and we learned a lot in that process. We got help from the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond from New Orleans, and their Undoing Racism training. We got help from Liz Lerman, who came in and talked to us about transition in organizations and how to honor the past and go through the stages of mourning and move on in a healthful way. And I think that there was something about the relationship between myself and Bonnie Brooks, who was the most immediate director, and who stayed in the unit and became a part of the faculty and went back to the classroom and went through a process with us of learning and thinking and changing and evolving herself. I mean, Bonnie and I, and would say yes to let's go for a walk on the lake. And we would start off in disagreement and we would come back in disagreement, but still have respect for one another. And when it came time to figure out the budget and save the presenting series, we rolled up our sleeves and put our heads together and worked hard. And I think that there was something about the respect and professional and personal growth that we fostered in each other that I will always be grateful for. And I think that it was good for the evolution of the organization and its relationship to the city as a whole.
Yeah, and that's listening to that, listening to you, we started to do that a little bit is zoom out and look at the place that the Dance Center holds within the Chicago dance community overall. It's a special place, and I'm, thinking about how the students at the dance center, I mean, that's sort of an on-ramp to the Chicago dance community if they choose to stay. Can you tell me a little bit about those bridges between the institution and the community?
Well, that was a long legacy that had been going on before I got there. That when I got there, it was almost as if the dance center was the hub of a wheel, and there were so many choreographers and technique teachers who were solidly teaching in the curriculum of the Dance Center of Chicago, who were also leading companies. Carrie Hansen was there. Julia Rhodes came in and out. We had, people that were teaching in a variety of styles, but most solidly in the contemporary mid-sized company arena. And that inherently, I think that in some ways that's obvious, that dancers would train with faculty members who would then audition for those faculty members' companies in some ways. I think that when we were able to make the shift that we made, which brought Amani A. Payne in as a faculty member, which brought Ayo from Ayodele Dance in as a faculty member, among others. This is my weak spot. In moments like this, I blank on names, but so those of you that I'm forgetting, please forgive me. There was Brave Monk who came later. And so all of those representative sort of spokes that were teachers in the hub would then provide these opportunities for students to follow them out into the city. And the city itself was an incredible laboratory, both historically and in terms of the moments that the students spent with us. The other thing that was so very powerful about Columbia College was its dance studies curriculum. And it had one of the most robust dance studies curriculum for undergraduate students that existed in the country in the times that I was there. There were 3 levels. Dr. Rocky Monroe, Dr. Peter Carpenter, as well as Bonnie Brooks were 3 very different, very deep, very informed perspectives that gave students a vocabulary to go out in the city and understand what they were looking at from a historical, conceptual, and an analytical perspective. And so I think that our students started going out and making their work and presenting their work and working together to present their work and fundraise for their work. And in many ways, I think that they have really spoken for themselves and are, winning awards and building infrastructure and making it happen. And the thing that's especially gratifying for me now is to see it happening in so many different dance forms and in so many different dance communities across the city, and knowing that we made a contribution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess just for what it's worth, that contribution is directly felt by me right now. I have a Columbia grad sitting to my right here who's been working with us for the past year and doing a great job, and really is just a testament to the education that folks receive at the Dance Center. Onye, thank you so much for telling us a little bit about your time there. I'm really glad that we could have you here today.
All right, so nice. Thank you for inviting me, and good luck with the rest of your marathon.
Thank you.